Start with the roll call. Richard Black. Here. Dan Sargent. Here. Dan Brown. Alec Mosley. Here. Katie Trahan.
Here.
Greg Rollins. Here. Greg Malou.
Here.
All right, moving on to the previous meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
You'll have to do two motions, then the two meetings.
Do we want to hit them separately?
Yes.
We're going to address the February 7th meeting minutes. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? They are accepted. Approval of the minutes of February 15th, special call meeting.
Move we approve those minutes.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? They are adopted. Staff and community reports.
There are none from me.
Okay. Starting with old business. Building permit expiration zoning code amendment. We are placing that amendment in the mayor's hands to get legal proof of it. At that time, we will bring it back before the commission and we will discuss and hopefully vote and pass. Any comments or questions? Thank you. Rezoning parcel from C3 to industrial, Dingley. It's no longer industrial. C3, C2 to C3, or it's just not.
C3, it is C3
It's C3 now.
now.
Yes.
Yeah. And I didn't ask for it to be changed. I asked previously, but on this bill, I don't have any business before you in regard to
Got you. And so in reference to that, the idea was that we were going to locate the items out of C2 into C3 zone, correct?
And move items from industrial to
C3. Or
Such
we no
as-
longer have industrial zone.
well, yeah, we don't have we still have industrial zoning and zoning ordinance, but we don't have on the map. But we're moving some of the uses such as general warehouse,
Right.
self-storage facilities, and then we said we were going to make special exceptions for hazardous material storage.
Right.
And then make it so that only propane tanks with storage would be available in C3.
And the next step for us is to vote on that at the next meeting.
I can bring the ordinance to you at the April 4th.
Correct. And we will kick that one down the road too. All right. Next item. A land use plan by the mayor.
Excuse me,
Sure.
may I say something?
I'm sorry, yes, go ahead, comment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm a little nervous, but I'm here to just say that I think it is a mistake to change the usage of C3 to include propane tanks and storage. And it's not self-storage. Railroad cars are not self-storage. I say this because there was a lot of thought, I'm sure, that was put in by prior mayors and prior staff in determining what makes a C3. And in that, we're talking about it's to serve the interstate. It's to serve the usage of the interstate. Typically, that would be food establishments, hotels, all kinds of businesses related to traffic on and off an interstate. And I'm not necessarily opposed to having somewhere in the area of Monteagle for industrial. I think that works for any community where you have light manufacturing and things like self-storage units. But just because we do not want to have railroad cars on our main corridor is not a reason to make this dramatic change. I really hope that, I know that the landowner has a really great piece of property and it has potential. And I'm really hoping that you can work with the landowner to look for ways that it can be a viable, profitable business for him. The other thing, I just have a little bit concerned about propane tanks right on parallel to I-24. You know, I don't know if they're filled or unfilled. If they're filled, then, you know, a major leakage or fire could really create problems with that interchange. We've already talked about how problematic it is when there's an accident on I-24. I want you to take that into consideration. But I wrote something up. Please just think long and hard about this, and I do hope that there can be a minimal opportunity for that property. But no one wants to see stacked up railroad cars, some of them blasted out and rusting. As you're approaching our town, and you're seeing this from the interstate. Now, I know there's opportunities for fencing as some kind of barrier. If you guys do vote for that, if you do, go ahead and proceed with making C3 so that you can have these two proposed businesses. I hope you will take into consideration how it would look, both from the interstate and from Dixie Lee Highway. That's all I have to say, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Ms. Allen. Further comments or discussion? Highway. We'll be good. Maybe you want to make a comment again about your plan?
Sure. I've been working on various solutions to creating a land use plan, general plan, which is felt by many, I think, to be necessary in many towns. It's just how we go about it. Some ways have been suggested that would be, in my opinion, costly to the town at this time. I think a first step could easily be citizen input, seeing what some other places may or may not have done as far as good experiences. But I want it clear to the residents, because they're the ones most affected and they live in this town, what they want, what they envision Monteagle to be. And I am not opposed to having town hall meetings, quite frankly, at no cost, with the citizens for their input. Once we get to the outside of consultants and facilitators and whatever their titles may be, I understand it gets costly, upwards of $50,000. Quite frankly, that's a little more than I think the town should spend at this time. So I'm looking for other alternatives. Maybe go ahead and starting and getting citizen input as a good first step, but we'll see how things develop financially, economically. I understand the Fed was meeting as recently as today. We'll see where interest rates and developments and grants and all the financial issues fall into play here. So that's my thought. Grant?
Yeah, just quickly, I mentioned this at the council meeting the other day, but I'd like to bring it up at the city commission as well, or the planning commission as well. I think this needs a priority. Having a master plan in place gives, I think from the charter, gives the planning commission and some others the opportunity to approve and deny based on the master plan, which could keep a nudist colony from coming in on Main Street or something ridiculous like that. So I would recommend, Mr. Mayor, that maybe put a subcommittee together that's 1 or 2 people from the council, 1 or 2 people from the planning commission, 1, 2, 3 or 4 people from the community to kind of sit down and really drive this thing home. I think that needs to be a priority. I think what comes out of that then will help you determine whether it's worth the money spending to have outside consultants finalize the plan and put it together, or if it's something that the city can do internally.
That was exactly my comment by citizen input. That's what I plan to do, is some kind of subcommittee perhaps, but on a larger scale, certainly a town hall meeting with the residents involved. And it's a good first step, and thank you. You've elaborated on my thinking. Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, I'd like to just read from Tennessee Code Annotated, which states that the Regional Planning Commission is charged with several specific duties. It is required to adopt a general plan and any amendments thereto. So I want to open by saying it is the primary requirement of this body to do that. And I'm going to ask you to go further than what the mayor is asking for, and I'm asking for a vote that you recommend that the city council pursue a general plan in concert with the planning commission. That is not any sort of allocation of any resources to Mr. Maloof's concerns, but it is a statement going on record that the Planning Commission is in favor of a general plan and empowering then the commission to look into it further. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Well, I don't want to debate this all night, but the mayor has the authority to appoint committees, which is something that I think Grant and I have just discussed. If that's the idea and it's up to the chairman to conduct his meeting, that's fine. I'll be happy to discuss it further during discussion of the motion. If there are grants out there, which is another leg that I am looking into, to pay for this, that's fine. All I'm saying is it's great to have all these things, but we have to pay for them. So if TCA thinks we absolutely need one, then I would call the governor and I will ask him for a grant of 100%. Because to pay for it, yes, but we don't know what we have to pay for until the fiscal year is over. That's my feeling. To say it'll be okay, that's something else.
So, might I submit that it is now early March and the budget process needs to be concluded by June 30th. So in order for us to entertain it, we need to begin that process now. And so if you're going to entertain a subcommittee to evaluate the need for this, I would ask that it conclude its business in 30 days, because we've been talking about this since last November. So, and have not made any progress. But we've talked about it in prior administrations, but under your administration, we've been talking about this since November.
Well, I don't think we need a committee to see if it's necessary. I think we need a committee to get the conversation started. Do we look at ordinances? What kind of general plan are we talking about? So I think it was more a discussion, not to say we need one. Obviously, TCA says we do need one. How we go about it, I think, is that committee that I have in mind. But I understand your comments. Was there something else? Yeah.
I was just going to say that the American Institute of Architects participated in a visioning process to help build a plan for Kingston Springs, and it was very, very effective and helpful. We had a lot of community involvement. It was well publicized in the local paper and other media. So if you might want to look into that. It's the American Institute of Architects.
Thank you.
Southern National Chapter.
Further comments? Commissioners? Well, I think I'm gonna take the lead with you, Nate, and I'm gonna put a statement together, and we'll bring it in front of the commission at our next meeting and ask them to vote on it. And I will ask for their input this next month as we put this together on what we recommend the council do this next fiscal year as far as a master plan, which I remember, 2 or 3 years ago, there was a town hall, came up with some excellent ideas, put some poster boards together with what we wanted to do between the intersections to maintain the quality of our community. And I think that I'll take a lead on that, and we will have some kind of statement at the next meeting, and then I'll run it by you for comment.
Just as a final comment, I think that those town meetings should be case in point, as well as the town meeting we had here last month, that without a professional facilitator who can bring this across the finish line, we're not going to be successful. So I would urge y'all to consider the fact that all of the questions that are being brought by these people in this crowd and have been brought to you since you've been on this board can be informed and better answered with a plan for you to operate off of. And to the mayor's point, I'm not sure the town of Monteagle can afford not to have a general plan that's put together by a professional.
But to the mayor's point, just how do you pay for this facilitator?
And we begin the process now because the budget needs to be done by June 30th.
All right. Thank you. Any more comments, Mayor? Master plan, you ready to move on that?
No, I'm ready to move on.
Thank you. Highway residential, preliminary plat. Gentlemen, we appreciate you being here. I felt important that we had somewhat of a frank conversation at the workshop. I think it pointed to where we are, the rubber's meeting the road here. And if you have anything further that you'd like to add or present, please step forward and do it. So thank you. All right. New business. Taco Bell site plan. Excuse me, go
A
ahead.
motion needs to be made on the highway residential subdivision and discussion and motion.
You're right. You're right. So do we need to,
I didn't hear a motion to be made, what?
we need to make a motion on highway to either cancel it, or we could table it once if they want it. I think we need their input on that.
Yeah, it has to be approved or denied.
Right.
What does their site plan?
Their preliminary plat.
I move that the preliminary plat for the hideaway development be accepted.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we'll do a roll vote on that.
Discussion? Discussion on the motion?
Commissioners, any discussions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is this, I was looking at it on the assessor's map, and it doesn't appear that that this parcel has been split from the larger parcel, and that it's, I think it said it was 205.05 acres. Is that correct? Or has it not been updated?
It's on, just move it toward you.
I think it had gone off.
I was looking at the assessor's map, and it looks like that this parcel hasn't been split from a larger parcel, and that it's 205.05 acres. Is that correct? Or has the map not been updated?
Clifton Miller, I'm the attorney for the Hart family and the project. That's part. My name's Clifton Miller. I'm an attorney out of Tullahoma. I represent the Hart family and the development. That is accomplished during the platting phase.
Okay.
So when the plat is finally approved and then goes to be recorded, then the tax assessor takes the plat from the recording in the registrar's office, and then you would have 83 parcels. I believe there's 83 lots. Then that parceling process at the tax assessor office does not take place until after recording the plat.
Thank you.
Okay. But this is not, that wouldn't add up to the 205. So
No.
the part that's all on the west side of the road.
That parcel will still be a portion of the previous whole, whatever's left, and will remain on the tax rolls as a contiguous piece. Your parceling at the tax assessor's office does not take place until the plat is recorded.
I understand that
Okay.
part. I just, since it's, such a bigger part, I didn't know if you had already split this and it wasn't.
No, it gets split at the recording of the plat. And whatever is not a portion of the plat remains as a unified parcel.
As a completely separate parcel.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay, often it's split in advance, and then just the plat would be recorded and
Well,
parceled out
if it's
later.
if it's sold separately to, like someone comes in and buys 100 acres and they view that, then there's a deed, flows through the registrar's office, which triggers the tax assessment.
Right.
But in a situation where the developer is also the owner, that parceling does not take place until the recording of the plat.
So what kind of plans do you have, or do you have
There-
plans for this
there-
other?
There's no
part?
current plans for the remaining property. There's current plans for what is in front of you.
Okay, so there's no thought right now for the other part?
The current plans are in front of you for the highway 83 lot.
Okay.
Further questions from commissioners? Comments? Commissioners? Public comments? We'll get started. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is John Claybrook. My wife Cammie and I have owned property on Valley View Drive off of Wren's Nest Avenue for over 20 years. I would just like to reiterate comments that Grant has made and others have made on this issue, on this development, that just because, just because legally you can approve a project and it fits within some broad, loosely defined parameters, doesn't necessarily mean that you should approve it. And I believe it's incumbent on you, the Planning Commission, to determine what's in the overall best interest of the community. I think it's clear, it should be obvious that it's not in the best interest of the neighbors who live on or around Wren's Nest. And it goes back to what others were saying about the master plan, that it comes down to what kind of development do we want to see in the town of Monteagle? What kind of development is appropriate and proper looking forward? And I would say that we don't know that right now because we don't have a general plan. I would also say that given the uncertainties, from what I understand, of relating to access, relating to water usage, relating to sewer, that it would be premature to give approval of the site plan at this time.
Thank you, sir.
Just a real quick question. One, I wholeheartedly agree with my neighbor here, says all the right things. But can this, since this is on for an up or down vote, can this be done, can this be approved by condition? Like, for instance, the entrance to Wren's Nest Road, would that be an amendment that a commissioner would need to bring up for approval or something? Okay.
Further comments from the public?
I would suggest that you remember that motel is coming in too, so that's going to be extra traffic on Wren's Road.
Yeah, it's going to be a perfect storm.
And we don't know when
T-Dot's in the
T-Dot's
middle of
coming
it
through
right
with
now.
the bridge, so.
Yeah.
But it's an avoidable perfect storm.
We'll see. Comment, sir.
I just wonder what's the history of this property? Of course, I know part of it, but I'm sure a lot of people don't know. And this is not a piece of property and I guess they need to tell the history of it, how long we've had it, and what they were holding it on for. And then, does the Planning Commission try to balance out any property owner rights in your considerations of what you do? Or does the Planning Commission think that you just tell the property owners that's a bad project or that's a good project or whatever? Because it seems like anything's ever discussed about property owner rights.
Correct.
What's the Planning Commission's position on that?
My position of the planning commission, that we have 8 members and we vote by majority. And it does have negatives, but it has positives too, on the jobs and taxes and other assets that I've not heard a lot about, but I know they're out there. Further comments from the public? Yes, sir.
I would just reiterate concerns about water and sewage,
Yes, sir.
because it seems like if we're gonna grow, which is great, we need to have a plan and make sure that we can handle the water and sewer.
And I have to apologize here because I made a commitment to you people that our water and sewer engineer would show up. And I asked him to show up and he is not here, so you see how much weight I carry, all right? But he does need to be here. He needs to address these concerns. They are legitimate concerns to me. And I think others in this commission too. Further comments? we have a motion on the table to vote up or down on the site plan approval. Commissioners, anything further before we do a roll call count?
Mr. Chairman, just to touch on Mr. Lade's comment, when we have commercial property that is in conflict with residential property, I think as setting commissioners, we have a fiduciary responsibility to look out in the best interest of the local natives that have history, they have residents established, they have families established, and the decisions that we make, if the decisions we make offer a negative impact to those individuals, then we've done no justice to our service here.
Thank you, Commissioner Rollins. Further comments? All
I
right.
have a quick comment.
Go ahead.
I also resent the email from Travis Wilson, talking about his, evaluation of the engineering plans. And so it's the same email, the same conditions that, y'all put on it at the last meeting, that was a tie.
Mhm.
About having each individual lot having a sewer maintenance agreement, which will be recorded on the final plat, which outlines the responsibilities and requirements of the property owner regarding the step system for the sewer. And then, the second one being that, making a note that there's an existing force main on the final plat, and the associated lots where this force main crosses must have an existing easement shown with restrictions for fencing and structures erected along that easement to allow for it.
So in essence, our water and sewer engineer has signed off on the project. Thank you, hon.
Include those conditions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is all, it's, you could note it now if you approve the preliminary plat, but this will be shown on the final plat before lots are sold.
I have a comment. In our brief discussion in our workshop, the main issue appeared to be the location of the entrance. It seemed to be what kept coming up. We had proposals that go to one entrance that I don't think will fly simply because of safety concerns. And we had the possibility of one entrance with a gated emergency entrance for our services. What we're voting on right now is the straight up and down of the site plan that's in front of you showing two entrances. We're clear on that. We're ready to vote? Go ahead, Al.
Terry, is it appropriate to move, to amend your motion to require the site plan to include the provisions that Anya just told us that came from our engineering side?
Right.
Well, I move that such an amendment.
Do we need to do that? I mean, that's part of
That
the,
was his advice, yeah.
you think that's a good direction to go? Instead of leaving that up to the codes and building permit?
I may withdraw my motion, just come up with a new one.
All right.
If the second is agreeable to my motion, I withdraw my motion to allow the wording that Mr. Mosley incorporated rather than amend and amend. I think it'd be cleaner if we just had a new motion stating what commissioners felt. Who seconded my motion?
I did.
Do you have a problem withdrawing the motion?
I'm fine with seconding the next motion.
So
Okay, then if someone wants to make a motion.
we are looking for a motion that accepts the site plan with the specific iterations on water and sewer as listed in the letter from our engineer, correct?
Down to two conditions.
I'm going to ask for comments from the other party on this. Issues or concerns? Okay. We clearly understand now what we're voting on.
Access? What about access?
We're voting on the access shown on the drawing. The only modifications that we are listing as exceptions are the water and sewer issues addressed in the letter from our engineer. Okay?
At a minimum, can any of the commissioners request removing one of those accesses and making it only an emergency services access?
A commissioner can do that, yes.
I request motion to make the Wren's Nest entrance an emergency only access and to require a performance bond for the project.
That will already be in place due to subdivision regulations.
We don't, the performance bond is not an issue here, is it?
Well, yeah, it's already in place where there will be a bond placed if the infrastructure is not completed by the time the lots will be sold.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so, Commissioner, I'm gonna ask you to restate what you want us to do here.
That the Wren's Nest entrance is an emergency access only.
Thank you. Now, comments, input?
I'll make a comment.
Please go ahead, Mr. Lester.
Thank you for the comment. Joe Lester, Hardin Family Partners. If we do that, and I live on lot 27 in the development, and there's a bad wreck where 41 goes down the mountain from Main Street. I'm having a heart attack, and I can't get out because you're telling me that back entrance is for emergency only for fire department. Oh, it's an egress ingress. I want to go to the Sonic for dinner and eat a number one and a corn dog. I got to come out to 41 and go around. It's an egress ingress entrance for the emergency and to the people that live in there. We're not talking about a tremendous amount of traffic coming out on in this road at 6 o'clock at night. I mean, good gosh. And when we dissect into that here.
Thank you, Mr. Lester.
Mr. Chairman, does Katie's motion need a second?
We need to restate this motion clearly for all of us, okay? So we have on the table a motion, that has been made.
Somebody has something up there.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to respond to that comment that we don't know what the volume of traffic is going to be at any given time from the ingress and egress onto Wren's Nest Road. We don't know. It could be, if there are 80-something properties, and there could be 2 cars per home at any given time. It could be a significant volume of traffic coming onto Wren's Nest Road at any given time. So, I'm sorry, but it would have a huge impact on those property owners.
Just to throw back to the traffic study, we paid $7,500 for it to do at your request.
Correct.
What the state say?
Yeah, so, we were, as a part of this study, we were told by Anya that it goes a long way to have TDOT review a traffic study. So I performed a traffic study. I'm a professional engineer licensed in the state of Tennessee. We had traffic counts that we collected at US 41, Dixie Highway, and West Main Street, Wren's Nest, the northbound interchange ramps, and we also put tube counters further up behind the commercial and Wren's Nest. We looked at those traffic counts that we got. They were 12-hour counts, so over the bulk of the day. We looked at those counts and compared it to historical data that's on TDOT's website. Anybody can access that data. We're much higher than your average day out there on our counts, so we feel good that we had sound counts. Now, we're not talking about your abnormal 24 wreck where you got people. I know that people were out through 41, but you can't do engineering analysis on a scenario like that. We looked at our development with 2 accesses, which is good for traffic because it allows traffic flow to equalize and disperse on both counts. If it's congested on Wren's Nest, people will naturally migrate to 41. We looked at each intersection to see, with the inclusion of our project, are we degrading this intersection past the criteria set forth by TDOT, and we are not changing the level of service at each intersection more than what it already is performing at. So, we've gone through all the hoops on the traffic study. We've gotten TDOT conditional approval for taking access on 41, so they reviewed our study and they agree with our findings and our analysis. there's not much else we can really do, to, you know.
Thank you. Again.
Just quickly, this is a compromise, in my opinion, on behalf of the homeowners who don't want a tiny home resident, or fly-by every single weekend rental thing in a single-family neighborhood that's been there for 130 years. Having them keep their access on 41 where they have TDOT approval and taking it off Wren's Nest, in my opinion, is kind of our compromise to them. And I don't understand what the big deal. Mr. Lester had mentioned in the last meeting that would save him a bunch of money in the development process. So I'm not really sure what the big argument is against having that just as a emergency exit.
Can't do it for fire codes. You have to
You
have.
do not have to do it for fire codes.
Thank
can
you.
have an emergency. You do not.
Gentlemen, let's keep it professional. Yes, ma'am.
I live across the street on 41 from the development, and I'll have to agree with Mr. Lesser. I certainly understand, because my life will change forever with the development, but I do understand that when an accident happens on 41, it's pretty major, and if somebody's lockstepped in that development and it's approved, it's not a good thing.
Okay. In the back, please.
Has the sewer and water capacity study done by Travis Wilson been completed, and have you guys reviewed it?
Yes, it has been completed, is my understanding, and I have seen it, but I have questions about it.
Well, there's a lot of development we're talking about.
Yes, it is.
From homes, to
There's a lot of
hotels,
capacity here.
to truck stops, to fast food restaurants. My question is, planning commission, for y'all to start approving site plans and issuing building permits, what's going to happen if y'all start doing this and then find out you can't provide utilities for some of these people that are in line waiting to build?
We understand your concern.
I mean, is it just get in while you can and just hope you ain't the last one stuck with the bag? Because I think I built a hotel, and I can show you case law and instances in the state of Tennessee where people have built stuff and they could not get the water because they bypassed the water department or bypassed the utility study and found out they couldn't provide what they should have provided in the first place. It sounds like to me a lot of this is getting way the cart before the horse. We've been going through this for a few years now.
Yes, we have. That's not the issue at this vote, but I agree with you. Now,
It could be though, because you're getting ready to approve something that this gentleman up here's got a gas station wants to build. You know, you're gonna tell him he can't build it now because he can't have the water? He doesn't have the water there?
the same way that I trust the professional engineers with the highway project that put their license on the line, I trust our water and sewer engineer. But you are right, this is a big development, and if we put a motel behind Sonic next, there's gonna be an issue, and we have to address that.
Well, that was the question I asked in the last meeting, was did he take into consideration, what if 4 of these 6 developments or 8 developments are built? Did he take into consideration the usage of those sites? And how it's gonna affect is that the outcome that he came up with?
All I can say is at this time, our engineer has signed off on this drawing, and he accepts that we can provide services to the highway. They've reduced their count, they've increased the square footage of their lot, they've increased the square footage of their home. We still call them a tiny town community, I don't think they are. So, moving forward, yes, sir.
Back on the access issue, if these 2 entrance, egress, and ingress points on Wren's Nest and 41 are both unrestricted, I would guess that 95% or more of the traffic coming into this development will come off of Wren's Nest Avenue. And if you're talking about also doing a motel or hotel behind the Sonic, that's going to make an impact that's just irreparable and needs to be taken into consideration.
Thank you. Further comments?
In all due respect, sir, how do you come up with that analysis that Wren's Nest will get the major part of the traffic load?
Because it's right across from the exit from I-24. I think if you were on Waze or Google Maps or whatever navigation app that you use to get around, it would take you that way.
Traffic flow is going to move in the path of least resistance, and the individuals in the community will decide what's the best way in and out for them.
The individuals in the communities are all gonna be rentals. I mean, come on, nobody's gonna be living there full-time permanently. It's just.
We're assuming we've got a traffic problem that we may not even have. Okay? I've been here 58 years. I used to get off the school bus on 41 and walk to Ingman Farm and never see an automobile from a mile and a half. Okay? And now I have to look both ways and not pull out if one's coming because it's 40 miles an hour, but they usually come in 70. Okay? So yeah, there's traffic issues we all have to live with, but I think we should be good neighbors. There's nothing in this subdivision that is bad for Monteagle from my point of view. We may have to sit and wait a little bit in traffic, yeah, but we're not going to be Murfreesboro. There may be a stop street at McDonald's because there's 2 bridges going to be taken out in the near future, and that's going to be a 2-lane road with a turn lane. Okay? That will increase in itself, in and of itself, a traffic issue. We're going to have traffic problems, people. That's going to be our lot in life in Monteagle to come.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. We need to keep this moving. We still don't have a clear motion on the table to vote on so far.
I'm not going to second a motion that has one entrance.
Thank you. We still have to come up with a clear and concise motion to vote on this. And as I understand it right now, we have their site plan with 2 entrances. We have notes concerning water and sewer, correct? And we have notes concerning reducing to 1 entrance, or are we leaving that off the motion?
The motion was to change, to require run.
It's been changed 3 times.
Run as emergency access.
Emergency, that was the second, right?
But the motion was made and not seconded.
I'll second the motion.
Which motion?
Per motion.
Now it's seconded.
Please state your motion one more time, boys.
To amend the motion to allow Renton's Nest entrance to be an emergency access only.
Okay. That's it. We've got a motion.
Right, and that's building off of, just a clarification, the original motion, which was with Travis Wilson's 2 conditions.
His
final
notes
plat. Okay.
for approval. Richard?
I second.
That we have a second. Commissioners, we're gonna vote by roll call on that.
You're voting on the
Amendment to the motion or the motion?
The amended motion.
Well, it hadn't been
No,
amended.
you gotta approve the amendment.
The amendment.
You gotta
first.
put it amended to show the amendment.
So we need to, I'm sorry, I'm lost then.
The original motion was to approve it without that condition on the exit.
Greg withdrew his motion on that, did you not?
Yes, my motion's off the table.
Okay.
There was another motion
Yeah.
made by someone.
Right. So now we have,
And
I thought, I'm sorry to be confused. I thought that I proposed an amendment to the mayor's motion.
Yes, and then,
And that he withdrew his motion and with the consent of the seconder, modified his original motion so that his motion to approve the plat included a condition that the recommendations, regarding sewer.
That's what I
I thought my motion was off the table and withdrawn, and someone made a new motion.
I don't,
no, you did.
all I did was move to amend the original motion.
Mhm.
All right, then that's
I
up.
haven't moved to approve the plat.
My motion-
So that's my fault. We didn't address yours and jumped over it and then put them together. Okay. So,
I'm off the
I
table.
need some guidance here.
You need a new motion.
We need a new motion on this.
Okay, so how would you like to do it? Would you like to do it with all of the conditions on one motion, or would you?
Yes. So, number one, we're,
So Katie would need to make a new motion then.
number one in the motion is we're addressing the site plan. Submitted, right?
Sorry, would you like to make a new motion with the condition of Travis, the town engineer, and the emergency access?
Yes, you would.
I move to approve the site plan with Travis's conditions. Travis Wilson, the town engineer's conditions, making Wren's Nest Road an emergency access only entrance.
Do I have a second on that? Are we ready to vote on this?
Richard Black.
I will, yes.
I heard it from Richard Black first. I heard your second.
So the second is Richard Black?
Yeah.
Okay. Roll call vote. Richard Black.
Yes.
Dan Sargent.
Yes.
Alec Mosley.
Yes.
Katie Trahan.
Yes.
Greg Rollins.
Yes.
Mayor Malou.
Yes.
Chairman votes positive. It's unanimous. Now, to the owners and the design team, how do you all feel about that?
I have a small question.
Yeah.
As I understood it, the only exit on Prince Lane is emergency. So
Correct.
everybody else has to go out 41?
That's correct. It is an emergency access, entry and exit.
Interesting.
Moving right along after that. New business. Taco Bell site plan.
Yes, let's make Tim Ryder with Taco Bell.
Please come up, Tim. Did you?
Tim Miner with Tacala, which is Taco Bell franchisee out of Birmingham.
Okay.
So we're looking at the site just down the road here, the Jesse's Grill site. Some of y'all have seen the plans. Don't know. Try to answer any questions or.
Are you your review?
Everything has been, has fulfilled your requirements.
Thank you.
Can you tell us where the site is?
It's where the site is. It's located down the road right here where Jesse's Grill is on the corner of Forsyth. Taking Jesse's Grill out.
Okay. Any other questions or discussions from the commissioners?
I have a question. So are you the franchisee?
Yes. Yes, we're the franchisee, the developer, owner, engineers. We're in-house.
You're everything. Okay.
Yes.
All right, put on all that.
I thought, one, your site plan was great. I mean, we've never seen anything like this, so this was fantastic. Thank you for that. I have one question is on here, it says that RBT is the owner of the site.
Yes, we have not purchased the site yet.
Okay.
We wait till, instead of buying the site before we know we can get approvals, we don't want to put that money into a lot and we find out we cannot. So it will, after I get approvals, then we'll go through the process of changing owners.
Okay.
We haven't closed on the property.
You have
Okay.
a purchase agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, everything's in place. It's just, we don't close till we get further down the road.
That's really common. I mean, I totally I was looking on the tax records and it says that Riley Kilgore
Yes.
is the owner,
Yes,
not
it's still the
RBT.
owner. Yes.
So I just wanted to make sure that we understood what was actually going on.
Yes.
Commissioners, any further questions, concerns, or comments? Public? Go ahead, Dan.
Are there any concerns about the traffic flow out there?
Yeah, the truck
Nightmare out
traffic.
there.
Truck traffic's gonna be heavy.
Has a TDOT study been done on that?
We'll have a landscaping plan.
Okay.
Yeah, I do have the landscaping, and y'all's landscaping ordinance is
Interesting, isn't it?
yes. I got 40-something trees around the
I have a
side.
question, when are you gonna open?
Well, it depends on how fast we get the approvals. I still gotta get TDOT approval as well for the entrance, so, but I met with them on site today. Electric's already got my plans, gas has my plans, water and sewer, I've talked to them, so everybody's on board. Everything's on site, nothing's gotta be extended.
Welcome, Mark.
Wilson?
So the site plan for RBT shows a 5-foot sidewalk across that. The way this does not show a matching sidewalk. Is that something that y'all had talked about? I know there was a conversation about it earlier.
I did ask about a sidewalk, but nobody can answer me. Whether it was required or not. My plan is left with a slot in case a sidewalk has to be put in there. Because I didn't want to have to come back to PC with to show the sidewalk, so I discussed that with you, and I left room with my grading, stopped my curve 5 foot shy of the right of way, because the sidewalk would have to be on my lot. It won't fit in the right of way.
There is,
That could be part of the master plan, couldn't it?
That's consistent with what we asked RBT to do.
yeah, so it's not a requirement
Right.
for in your zoning ordinance, but it is something you could.
We might could trade something out.
So it'll tie back into, the continuous sidewalk, it'll tie back in to RBT?
Well, right now, there's a missing lot between RBT and this, but we would assume that that would be developed at some point, and would make sense from a continuity standpoint to be doing the same thing.
Nate, once his purchase is finalized, would that change, that's gonna change the footprint of the RBT site? Does that mean he would have to come back to us for a new site plan?
No, this was not included in the RBT site plan, so the part I'm talking about was adjacent to it. So they left Jesse's Grill out of the original site plans, my memory.
Good sidewalk between the two exits could be part of that master plan.
But y'all could put that in an amendment and get him on his way, because
We could do it on
he's
their
already
nickel.
thought about it.
We're doing a lot of development, we need to do it on their nickel, put these sidewalks in, yes.
Thank you.
I was involved in that conversation. It's a sidewalk to nowhere because of that missing piece.
Right.
But if there's some future plan or agreement, that when we can tie all the sidewalks together, I'd appreciate that.
It'll be, like I said, it would have to be on my side of the right of way, because we've got limited room out there, that little ditch, it's not gonna be in the right of way.
Thank you,
You
Mr.
would have to
Minor.
do
Go
a
ahead.
sidewalk in this process right now. You would approve it subject to a sidewalk being included if the developer is good with that negotiation.
Goodwill,
If I get approval, I'll probably do it.
goodwill after, yes. Yes, sir, Al?
I move we approve the request for approval of the Taco Bell site plan subject to the developer's commitment to include a sidewalk.
You have a second on that motion?
Second, Greg Ron, second.
Okay, so we will vote by acclamation on approval of the site plan with the noted addition of goodwill sidewalk from the developer. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Mr. Minor, it passes. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Can we put him in charge of all developments?
Volunteer Behavior Health Services, do we have a representative? Anya, you want to comment on that? Have you seen or hearing anything on that?
I haven't. I did send him back an email with, what else needed to be included. It's on page 20. But I never heard back from him. I assumed he was gonna send something back or be at this meeting to explain, but, he you can't vote on something without a representative.
Right. You know, I haven't really seen anything in the form of the site plan, have you?
Yes, I mean, I sent it to you all, with my review.
But you had about 10 things you wanted them to respond to.
Yes, yes.
So do we vote to reject it or just move on?
You just, because you've not, no motion can be taken because a representative is not
Right.
present. So
All right.
that site plan is printed out for you on page 19 of this figure. It's on the last page.
Comments back?
The change of ownership may not change the site plan, the footprint of the site plan for RBT, but it will for Rocky Top Truck Repair. It was never included in the truck stop site plan, but it is included on the Rocky Top Truck Repair site plan. So just to clarify, a lot of times we muddy the water when we're referring to RBT and Rocky Top because there are receipts that have both on their conflicting pieces of information.
Right.
It will change the footprint of the Rocky Top Truck Repair site plan and ownership.
I have not seen anything concerning that of you, that we would have to address on that.
January the 5th of 2021.
They carved it out last year.
They did?
Mhm.
A year one?
Oh, they did, right, they did, yeah.
All right.
I
I don't think there's any further action on our part needed on that.
Mr. Chairman, going back to Mr. Stamp's proposal, just reading the emails, could we confirm what he was considering the side and the back of that building? There was a little bit of
Yeah.
misinterpretation.
So because it's on the corner, and their drive is on Second Street, I considered Second Street to be the front, and the property bordering the church to be the rear, but, we were in disagreement because he wanted to consider that side to fit into the side setback. So, it's up to your interpretation, and I wanted him to be able to, present his case.
I think that's worth challenging.
Yeah, we need him present before we even address it. I agree. Okay, so we're, comments?
Get back to him and see if he'll answer the
Yes,
question.
definitely. I'll make a note to email him tomorrow.
All right, here we go again. Zoning ordinance amendment regarding the setback. We discussed it in the workshop. We have any further discussions or issues on this? I was satisfied with the answers that we got on the revised drawing, and you are in receipt of that revised drawing, and you were going to distribute it to us?
So on page, you're saying drawing, do you mean zoning ordinance amendment?
Yeah.
So with, I guess, I forgot what page it's on.
Right, we were going to approve what we can approve and send it to BZA.
Right, starting on 25, 26, 27, that is, James' amendment
Right.
to the concerns that were brought up by the planning commission emails from the past month. So you can,
So in recap, we were voting on our issue, and then the other issue was going to go in front of the BZA.
yeah, so this is what you're voting on today, it's the zoning ordinance amendment, not
Right.
anything to do with the site plan, just this amendment.
Discussions, Commissioner?
There's two amendments, so we're talking about the second one?
So the applicant of this request would like you to consider the second. Is that correct?
Yeah, the second amendment, the one that's 25, 26, 27, 28.
Right.
And then we had discussed clarifying on 604 BE, to say that the building setback is the rear building setback, to approve it with that addition of the word.
So we're gonna request an amendment to change this to fit one location? Is what I'm at, is what I'm hearing?
And again, that's up to interpretation. You'll have to change the zoning ordinance, for a condition.
Well, Katie, you raised some concerns on that issue. I thought that their response satisfied your concerns.
Not completely, I mean, I was trying to get the wording to be as acceptable to me as possible. However, I still have a real issue with changing an ordinance for a site plan. In my mind, we change an ordinance for the best of the town, not for an individual or a specific site plan.
Can I
Yes.
address that?
Yeah.
And the core of our issue with this is that we have a very small site plan, and the zoning ordinance, as it's worded, does not give flexibility for sites like ours that have three, we can seek a variance on one specific thing, but the other restrictions that are on the site, there's no way to work around them. So part of the reason that we're asking for this amendment is to give flexibility that on a case-by-case basis, not for our site, and worded in a manner that's every site that comes to you guys for it, to talk about, their site-specific conditions and what works for that site and for you, and that there's kind of the compromise. So that's how it's set up. So yes, we're asking that the amendment be changed because there's no wiggle room for like small awkwardly shaped sites like ours. We can't get a variance for, but one thing. The rest of the site there's nothing in the amendment to give any flexibility for you guys to even approve the site with how it's currently working. So that's our intent of this.
I do understand, and I feel like, I don't want to get back into your site, because that's not what this is supposed to be about. This is supposed to be about this ordinance. But I just felt like, and still feel like, the building is too large for the site. And, that a gas station and convenience store would have been fine, or, a restaurant would have been fine, or whatever, but too much, too big for the site. And then it's a safety concern in my mind. But that's not what we're here to discuss.
I echo what she said. I mean, using your words, you said you had a small site, but you got a lot of moving parts on it. You got barely enough parking places. You got drive-through coming from both directions. You don't have any place to unload.
We have a clear loading and unloading on the site out of the traffic.
You just got a lot of moving parts here.
Well, the whole thing that brought this up is that the ordinance requires a 30-foot setback behind our building. So your zoning ordinance requires our very small site to put 30 foot of service area behind our building. And on our site, it's very infeasible to have to work in circulation around an entire site, because you're limiting the use of the site to a very, very small footprint building, and it could be more. So we're asking, the consideration of moving the loading zone to an alternate location. That's the whole point of this, is that we're asking to not be required to put the loading zone in the back, to be able to put it in an alternate location. So that's the point of what this amendment is.
To be clear, and to Katie's point, have we satisfied the fire lane safety on the backside of the building with the drive-through windowing operation? Meaning, is there 2 lanes behind the building? Will there be 2 lanes of traffic behind the building?
No, there's only 1 lane behind the building.
There's 1 lane behind the building.
That's their safety concerns.
I mean, if you think about it, you're gonna require 30-foot setback in the backside, then how are you gonna fit anything into the side? Because anything in a convenience store doesn't go to the backside. They always come to the front. So I don't know why. That's for most likely for industrial base, or more like a more commercial base, where they're having loading and unloading a lot more. Which we're gonna have 10 deliveries. That's gonna bring not even 10 deliveries, probably. No, probably 5. 5 deliveries a week. That's gonna bring a big truck. The rest of them are coming in smaller trucks.
Here's single
good.
state circulation for the drive-through lane, but our primary site circulation is in front of the building with a single drive-through lane coming, wrapping around the building. There's no other traffic. The dumpster is off to the side completely of that. The loading zone is off to the side completely of that. The parking is off to the side completely clear of that. What safety issue do you specifically have about the
So during the February meeting, our fire chief and ordinance officer touched on the subject of if there was a vehicle in the service lane behind the building catches on fire, he cannot access that vehicle. So that's a safety concern. And to Katie's point, your building's too large for the size. I mean, something would have to give to address that safety concern.
So my concern would be, even if you condense that building, like, you know, it's like, I'm guessing 130 feet roughly. If you even condense it, that's not gonna have another lane in the back anyway, because, you know, you already have, because you have front setback is already 40 feet, back setback is 30 feet, and there's nothing left in the middle to build anything. So even if you're looking at it, there's gonna be a single lane no matter what.
If our safety officer would support that, I would support it. But I think what I recall hearing in the February meeting, he had concerns of the one-lane traffic behind the building.
I don't recall hearing that comment before. Was that one that we got?
Travis?
February 13th.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind if we call Travis, would you mind revisiting the circulation behind the community or behind the convenience store that we talked about in the February meeting?
Yes, sir. I was concerned of the wraparound style with condensed space. If one vehicle or something, you know, was to happen to catch fire back there, because like I told you, emergency services, we live on the Monteagle. If one vehicle catches fire back there, creates panic, there's nowhere for the vehicle to exit out, there's no way to get around that vehicle. We're gonna have trouble getting a fire truck and getting suppression equipment around to extinguish that vehicle, which can compromise the building. So that was my main concern, was just the tightness of it.
And with your review of the plan, there's no other way to access the back of that building other than driving through the service lane?
I mean, that'd be the customary approach on it. I'm sure, you know, we'll make do with what we have to, but that would be the serviceable point of entry.
Is it, it's my understanding that if a vehicle were on fire, the process would be that a fire truck would come to the site, get as close to it as possible, and as long as there was any point of access within 100 feet of a fire truck, then you could service it, correct?
And I've got a 200-foot cross line on my truck, so I can
So
service
you
it.
could easily pull in front, as far as that fire circulation, you could easily pull right in front of the convenience store at the front of the drive-thru entry, the side of it, and be within 40 feet of a hose, which is well within the 200-foot hose limit of a fire truck. Would that not be allowed considered access?
And I'm also allowing for emergency panic. You know, what's gonna happen when folks panic and they have nowhere to go? Not to have other people in danger. I mean, it's kind of my business is to make sure that we're allowing for public safety.
That's
addressed in IBC, and it is not required to have 2 lanes. All it requires is 1 lane around the entire building, and that's on any kind of building.
To say that would mean that you wouldn't be allowed to have any single lane, like single lane parking. You couldn't have single direction parking. You couldn't have every drive-through has to be 2 widths. Every parking space has to be 2 widths. That's why we have the. I understand that the code. The point of that is being able to access it with a fire truck and a fire hose. But to say that you can't allow this because you can't get a service vehicle back there means that no, you wouldn't allow anything to have single lane. Everything would have to be 2 lanes. If you took that and applied that to our site and every other site, I mean, we're well within fire hose lengths to address, which is perfectly reasonable for everywhere. I would think.
But if you were within that 30-foot, but if your building was compliant with the 30-foot setback, then you would have adequate space to put the addition.
I would make the argument that if the building had the 30-foot setback, you would still have to turn around and get fire truck turn radiuses in there to get it in, and you're still making that site unusable because of the 30-foot setbacks from the 3 streets and the 30-foot setback from the side. That site becomes unusable. It's over restricted for what it is, and is being able to access it with a fire truck and a 200-foot hose not, if there people can pull in front of the convenience store and you go back there, is that how close to an accident? I mean, do we have to get? And if we were to take that approach, an emergency vehicle has to get pulled right up next to a stalled vehicle, then there's substantial.
I'm not looking for a pull up to a stalled vehicle. I'm looking for an escape route for the occupants.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
I'm looking for an escape route.
An escape route for
the occupants, the other patrons that's there in the line.
Can they not get out of the vehicle?
Yeah,
there's sidewalk back there. Is that acceptable? I mean, there's 5-foot sidewalk behind the building, or if someone's panicking in their vehicle, I mean, I would think that you would want to get them out of the vehicle anyway.
That's right. Then the next vehicle becomes an exposure, and then it becomes a chain reaction, and then the building's involved as well. But if you'll come help me fight the fire, I agree with you.
Can I make a suggestion? They just take out the drive-through window, and there'd be no reason to have traffic going around behind the building?
I mean, then what's the point of having it developed in then?
I'm just trying to make it easy on you.
I know, but there's.
I'm trying to help you out here.
I don't know, I could not have a drive-through, but then I still got a 30-foot setback I gotta work with.
Let's get our focus back
But then
here.
you wouldn't have a vehicle back.
All right.
But then there's gonna be something else. Let's say that loaded truck got caught on fire. How are they gonna get access to it?
Excuse me a minute. Get our focus back. There are prerequisite here of this site plan review. Site plan review involved the loading and unloading areas that they generated on the side of the building for us now. As I understood it, the 30-foot setback in the back was revolving over to BZA for their review and approval. That is not what we're doing. What are we doing?
So the site plan was approved on February 7th.
Right.
On 3 conditions, that the engineering plans get turned in, that they get a variance from the BZA about the 40-foot setback on all sides of the right-of-way. So they have to get that variance from the BZA.
But not the 30-foot, it's not
And
part
then
of it?
this is a zoning ordinance amendment to that 30-foot setback. So you
So that's
guys
our
have it as
responsibility.
one of the conditions.
Okay.
And the only thing left for this commission to vote on is the recommendation that the council approve amendment to the zoning.
Yes.
Our site plan has tentatively been approved, and there are other issues that, we can, I think, address in permitting from there, but.
On the final set of documents that we produced, both civil, architectural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, will all be stamped into code. And we've done at least 100 convenience stores exactly like this in 20 states. What we'll produce will meet the IDC code. It will meet all of the requirements that we put in every other convenience store. This is not something unique or different.
Commissioners, further comments?
You have a question?
It was just a general comment that the 30-foot setback came up because our zoning ordinance currently required rear loading for these vehicles.
Right.
So that the issues or the conversation around public safety seems like they would be adequately addressed by the International Building Code and the fire marshal, and that if you were going to allow side loading, then the 30-foot setback would seem to need to relate to the side loading versus rear loading. And that's just me standing here listening from the outside.
I think you're spot on that. It's where it started. It's just kind of morphed into a few other things.
there's a couple issues to address about some things, and we're trying to kind of start it with this to allow some flexibility in the code, and we're not. And the intent with this is that the planning commission still approve everything case by case basis. Just that we'd be allowed to. There's no flexibility in the code to allow for variances for this. There's no flexibility in the code to allow for the planning commission to make a decision on anything other than what's black and white in the code. So the point of this amendment is to give you guys flexibility to look at alternate site plans for loading and unloading on a case-by-case basis and be able to approve those. And yes, it was our project that started it because we have a very small site. And the other issues aside, this may come up for other sites, and you would approach those on a case-by-case basis based on what the owner's needs are, what size loading that they need, and how they've handled it on that specific site. That's our
Commissioners, we need a motion.
What is the language that we're going to vote on to send it to the council?
You would make a motion to recommend
Zoning appeal.
zoning ordinance amendment that James submitted.
The one that's on page 25 through 28. 25 through 28. 25 through 27.
Yeah. Do I have a motion on that?
I don't know how to make it.
I move we recommend amendment to the zoning ordinance consistent with the changes shown on the document beginning at page 25 through 27 of our agenda materials.
Thank you, Alex. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Thank you.
All right. Do we want to do anything about that Saudi Daisy guideline?
No, I can review it till next month.
Let's wait on that.
Well, do you want to make a motion to have Monteagle adopt a similar site plan review checklist for staff and
I move we approve in principle the adoption of a new set of guidelines checklist and ask that Anya present us with one, a specific one that we could approve at the next meeting.
I can make one.
I support that too.
Second.
That's where we left it. I appreciate you verbalizing it. So we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes.
So can I be clear on that? So you have already approved the checklist. So is this going to go to city council now? And then I can show you what I created at the next meeting?
What I think I meant to move was that we approve in principle the adoption of a checklist similar to what you've shown us.
Okay.
And that we ask you to prepare a specific one we can approve.
So then you would recommend the city council to adopt?
Correct.
The next meeting.
Planning Commission bylaw amendments. I think we discussed that. Does that require a vote on our part? Anya?
Yes.
Any discussion? Wait.
Yes, with that one, and then also with that change that Anne Marie brought up that I missed.
Right.
With,
Article 4, Section 2.
yes.
Comments? Mayor? You good?
Yeah.
Richard?
Good.
All right.
We need a motion.
We need a motion to adopt.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes. Subdivision regulation plat review amendment.
Yes. Okay, so I sent it
You're up,
to
Anya.
you via email, and then also gave you a chance to review it. It's something that we spoke about back in the January workshop, amending application for preliminary plat approval, changing it from 7 days to 30 calendar days. I also deleted the requirement that 6 copies with corrections should be presented at the planning commission meeting. And I also included language that instead of the preliminary plat approval needs to be done within 30 days, otherwise it's just automatically approved. I did it to reflect Tennessee Code annotated, which right now says within 60 days it has to be approved or denied. Failure to act within 60 days shall be deemed an approval of the plat. I also cleaned up the language a little bit. So that was for preliminary, and I did the same changes for final plat approval of a major subdivision. So, for example, when the Hideaway residential subdivision comes before you again with the final plat, they will have to submit it 30 days in advance of the meeting. Not right now, it says 7.
Do you have a motion to adopt?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It is adopted. Hearing of persons having business before the commission. Gentlemen, anybody care? No business? Plenty of monkey business. All right. Thank you. I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.